Tonight, we are wandering through every cursed place in the wizarding world, tracing the shadows left behind in forgotten chambers, abandoned prisons, ruined cottages, and hidden corners of magical Britain. This is a quiet journey meant to carry you gently towards sleep, while the lantern light of old stories flickers across ancient stone. If you have listened before, you might tell us how many evenings this world has accompanied you. And if this is your first night here, simply settle in and let the castle gates open. Far beneath Hogwarts, where roots twist through bedrock older than any classroom, a faint dripping echoes through darkness. A lantern swings slowly. The air smells of damp stone and stagnant water. Somewhere ahead lies a place that was hidden for nearly 1,000 years, waiting beneath the feet of generations who never knew it existed. The Chamber of Secrets begins with a fact so extraordinary that it can easily sound like legend. Around the end of the 10th century, Salazar Slytherin helped found Hogwarts alongside Godric Gryffindor, Helga Hufflepuff, and Rowena Ravenclaw. Before leaving the school after disputes with the other founders, Slytherin secretly constructed a hidden chamber somewhere within the castle. According to the story preserved over centuries, he placed inside it a monster that only his true heir could control. Most witches and wizards came to dismiss the tale as myth. Yet the chamber was real, the monster was real, and the castle spent centuries unknowingly resting atop one of the most dangerous secrets in magical history. Why did nobody find the chamber for almost 1,000 years? The mystery becomes more fascinating the closer you examine the facts. Hogwarts was never a small building. It contained moving staircases, concealed passages, forgotten classrooms, secret tunnels leading to Hogsmeade, and rooms that appeared only when needed. Even so, countless students explored its corridors across the centuries. Teachers investigated rumors, headmasters commissioned searches. Yet the entrance remained hidden inside a second-floor girls' bathroom concealed behind a sink marked with a tiny serpent. The entrance required Parseltongue, the rare ability to speak with snakes. Since only descendants of Salazar Slytherin were known to possess that gift, the doorway remained invisible to almost everyone who passed it. The first confirmed tragedy connected to the chamber occurred in 1943. During that year, a Hogwarts student named Tom Marvolo Riddle discovered the entrance and opened it. At the time, he was handsome, intelligent, and widely admired by teachers. Few could have imagined that he would later become Lord Voldemort. While attending Hogwarts, Riddle used the chamber's monster to attack students. The victim who died was Myrtle Warren, a Ravenclaw girl who had been hiding in the bathroom after being teased by another student. She heard a boy speaking nearby in a strange language she did not understand. Moments later, she opened a door, saw a pair of enormous yellow eyes, and died instantly. Myrtle's death created one of the wizarding world's strangest hauntings. Rather than passing on, she returned as a ghost. Students would come to know her as Moaning Myrtle, forever lingering around the bathroom where she died. Decades later, she still remembered the final moments with remarkable clarity. She recalled hearing a voice. She remembered opening the door. She remembered seeing eyes, then darkness. The simplicity of that memory is chilling because it perfectly matches the known abilities of a basilisk, a gigantic magical serpent whose gaze causes instant death. Even as a ghost, Myrtle remained one of the most important witnesses to a crime she never fully understood while alive. Tom Riddle nearly lost everything after Myrtle's death. Hogwarts faced the possibility of closure. Headmaster Armando Dippet and the Ministry of Magic feared another attack. Rather than allow suspicion to fall upon himself, Riddle framed Rubeus Hagrid, who was then a third-year student. Hagrid possessed an acromantula named Aragog, an enormous spider he had secretly raised within the castle. Riddle convinced authorities that Aragog was responsible for the attacks. Hagrid was expelled, his wand was snapped, yet Aragog was innocent. Years later, inside the Forbidden Forest, the aged spider would explain to Harry Potter and Ron Weasley that the creature from the chamber was something spiders feared above all else. The basilisk itself was a masterpiece of dark magical planning. According to magical texts such as Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, basilisks are created through a forbidden process involving a chicken egg hatched beneath a toad. The practice had been outlawed for centuries because the resulting creature was extraordinarily dangerous. Slytherin's basilisk survived for generations inside hidden tunnels beneath Hogwarts. It traveled through the castle using the plumbing system, slipping unseen through pipes large enough to accommodate its immense body. This detail explains one of the great practical mysteries of the chamber. The monster was not wandering openly through corridors. It moved through hidden channels built into the structure itself, surfacing only when directed by its master. Why does the chamber seem less like a room and more like a curse embedded into Hogwarts itself? Consider what happened after 1943. The chamber was sealed once more. The attacks stopped. Students graduated. New generations arrived. Teachers changed. Wars were fought beyond the castle walls, yet the danger remained sleeping beneath the school. It was never destroyed. The secret simply waited. 50 years later, in 1992, the chamber opened again through the influence of Tom Riddle's enchanted diary. Although Riddle himself no longer attended Hogwarts, a preserved fragment of his 16-year-old self manipulated Ginny Weasley and continued the work he had begun as a student. The attacks of 1992 mirrored those of 1943, but with one important difference. This time nobody died. Colin Creevey was petrified while carrying his camera. Justin Finch Fletchley was attacked after seeing the basilisk through nearly headless Nick. Hermione Granger identified the monster before being petrified herself, leaving behind a crucial clue. Mrs. Norris, Argus Filch's cat, became the first victim. Each survivor escaped death because they never looked directly into the basilisk's eyes. Reflections, ghosts, cameras, and indirect views weakened the deadly effect into petrification. Looking back, the pattern seems obvious. At the time, it baffled almost everyone inside the castle. Harry Potter ultimately entered the chamber through Myrtle's bathroom. The journey carried him through narrow stone tunnels and into a vast underground hall lined with towering serpent-carved pillars. At the far end stood an enormous statue of Salazar Slytherin. There, Harry confronted the memory of Tom Riddle and the basilisk itself. The battle became one of the defining moments of his second year. Fawkes the Phoenix blinded the serpent. Harry drew Godric Gryffindor's sword from the sorting hat. With that sword, he killed the basilisk, ending a threat that had haunted Hogwarts for centuries. In the process, a basilisk fang destroyed Riddle's diary, though nobody yet understood that the diary was a Horcrux. The destruction of the basilisk did not erase the chamber's history. Even after the monster died, the underground halls remained. The stone pillars still stood beneath the castle. The enormous statue still watched from the darkness. During the Battle of Hogwarts in 1998, Ron Weasley and Hermione Granger returned to the chamber in search of basilisk fangs, using them to destroy additional Horcruxes. The fact that they could still find those remains years later suggests something remarkable. The chamber never truly disappeared. It remained beneath Hogwarts exactly where Slytherin left it, a silent monument to old divisions, hidden prejudice, and ambitions that survived long after their creator's death. As the echoes fade through those ancient tunnels, another question emerges from the darkness. If the Chamber of Secrets was not the only cursed place in the wizarding world, where did an even older darkness take root? To find that answer, the lantern must leave Hogwarts behind and travel south to a decaying cottage near the village of Little Hangleton, where one ancient family slowly destroyed itself long before Voldemort ever learned his own name. Why did the Gaunt family fall so completely when they possessed one of the most prestigious bloodlines in wizarding history? The question hangs over Little Hangleton like mist drifting across an abandoned graveyard. By the early 20th century, the descendants of Salazar Slytherin lived not in a manor or castle, but in a crumbling stone cottage standing beside a narrow lane. The family possessed treasures that connected them directly to Hogwarts' founder, Slytherin's locket, and an ancient ring bearing the Peveril coat of arms. Yet wealth had vanished. Influence had vanished. Even basic dignity seemed to have eroded. What remained was a household consumed by pride, isolation, and bitterness. The details come largely from memories collected by Albus Dumbledore during his investigation into Lord Voldemort's past. When Ministry official Bob Ogden visited the Gaunt cottage around the 1920s, he encountered a scene of astonishing decay. Marvolo Gaunt, the family patriarch, lived there with his son Morphin and daughter Merop. The cottage was filthy. The walls were neglected. Marvolo wore the ancient ring proudly while boasting about his ancestry. He could trace his bloodline back to Salazar Slytherin himself, yet his obsession with heritage had become so extreme that it had hollowed out nearly everything else in his life. Morphin Gaunt displayed another inheritance from Slytherin's line. He spoke Parseltongue naturally. When Bob Ogden arrived, Morphin used the language openly, hissing words that few living wizards could understand. This gift, once associated with one of Hogwarts' founders, had become another symbol of the family's isolation. The Gaunts no longer inspired admiration, they inspired discomfort. Local villagers regarded them as dangerous eccentrics. Ministry officials viewed them as troublemakers. Their ancient bloodline survived, but it survived in a form twisted by generations of intermarriage and resentment. At the center of this bleak household stood Merop Gaunt, the future mother of Tom Riddle. Unlike her father and brother, she appeared timid and frightened. Dumbledore later suggested that years of abuse had crushed much of her confidence. Yet Merop carried the same magical heritage as the rest of her family. From the window of the cottage, she often watched a wealthy young muggle named Tom Riddle ride past on horseback. He lived in the grand Riddle house overlooking the village. Handsome, privileged, and entirely unaware of her existence, he became the focus of her hopes. That simple fact would eventually alter the course of wizarding history. How did a lonely witch from a ruined cottage become connected to one of the wealthiest families in Little Hangleton? The answer lies in one of the most unsettling relationships in the series. After Marvolo and Morphin were imprisoned following an altercation with Muggles, Merope found herself free from their immediate control. During this period, she used a love potion on Tom Riddle. Under its influence, he left his family and accompanied her. They married. For a time, they lived together away from Little Hangleton. Yet the relationship rested upon enchantment rather than genuine affection. Once Merope stopped administering the potion, Tom Riddle abandoned her and returned to his parents. The consequences of that decision rippled far beyond the lives of two individuals. Pregnant and alone, Merope traveled to London. She gave birth on December 31st, 1926, at Wool's Orphanage. Shortly afterward, she died. Her son received the name Tom Marvolo Riddle, combining the names of his father and grandfather. The future Lord Voldemort entered the world carrying both sides of a bitter family history. From the Gaunts came Slytherin's bloodline and the gift of Parseltongue. From the Riddles came a heritage he would later despise despite sharing it himself. Little Hangleton became cursed in a far more direct sense during the summer of 1943. 16-year-old Tom Riddle returned to the village while still a Hogwarts student. By then, he had already opened the Chamber of Secrets and framed Hagrid. He had already begun exploring the limits of dark magic. When he visited Little Hangleton, he learned more about the father who had abandoned his mother. Soon afterward, Tom Riddle Sr., Thomas Riddle, and Mary Riddle were found dead inside the Riddle house. The bodies displayed no signs of physical injury. Yet their expressions suggested overwhelming terror in the moments before death. The Ministry investigation quickly focused on Morphin Gaunt. Evidence seemed straightforward. Morphin confessed. He possessed a history of hostility toward the Riddle family. Ministry officials accepted the case as solved, but Dumbledore later uncovered the truth. Tom Riddle had murdered his father and grandparents himself, using Morphin as a scapegoat. Through memory modification and manipulation, he ensured that blame fell elsewhere. The crime marked a crucial turning point. It was not simply murder. It was Voldemort's deliberate destruction of the Muggle side of his own ancestry. Why does the old ring feel more cursed than many openly dark magical objects? The answer stretches across decades. After murdering the Riddles, Tom transformed the ring into a Horcrux. The object already carried immense historical significance. Hidden within it was the Resurrection Stone, one of the 3 legendary Deathly Hallows. Yet Voldemort cared little for that aspect of the ring. He valued it because it represented his connection to Slytherin and the Gaunt bloodline. Through dark magic, he infused it with part of his soul. The result became one of the most dangerous objects in the wizarding world. Many years later, Albus Dumbledore located the ring in the ruins of the Gaunt cottage. Even he, one of the greatest wizards of the age, nearly fell victim to its curse. Upon recognizing the Resurrection Stone concealed within the ring, Dumbledore experienced a rare moment of overwhelming emotion. The possibility of seeing his family again clouded his judgment. He placed the ring upon his finger. Instantly, a powerful curse spread through his hand. Although Severus Snape managed to contain the damage temporarily, Dumbledore later admitted that the curse would eventually have killed him. The ruined cottage thus became linked to multiple tragedies across generations. It witnessed the collapse of the Gaunt family. It sheltered objects that belonged to founders and hollows. It became the birthplace of a chain of events leading directly to Voldemort's rise. Even after the family vanished, the place seemed to retain an atmosphere of abandonment and decay. Some readers have suggested that the cottage reflects a recurring pattern in Rowling's world. Dark magic often flourishes where love, responsibility, and human connection have withered away. Whether or not that interpretation is correct, the facts remain striking. The house produced one of the darkest legacies in magical history. Yet the Gaunt cottage was not the only location where despair lingered for generations. Far out in the cold waters of the North Sea stood a place so feared that hardened criminals begged not to be sent there. The next cursed place was not merely associated with suffering. Its very walls seemed designed to feed upon it. And unlike the forgotten cottage in Little Hangleton, this fortress never hid from the world. Every witch and wizard in Britain knew its name, Azkaban. Why did Dementors gather around Azkaban in the first place? The common explanation is simple. The prison used Dementors as guards. Yet when you follow the history far enough into the past, the sequence appears reversed. The island existed before the prison. The darkness existed before the guards. Long before the Ministry of Magic placed a single inmate behind its walls, sailors reported strange disappearances in the North Sea. Ships vanished. Crews never returned. The sea charts of magical Britain quietly avoided a certain stretch of water, and for generations few people understood why. The answer emerged only after the death of a wizard named Echrisdis. He was a practitioner of dark magic, so secretive that even his origins remain obscure. At some point before the 18th century, Echrisdis established a fortress upon a remote island, hidden through powerful concealment enchantments. There he lured Muggle sailors from passing ships and subjected them to unknown magical torments. What exactly happened inside the fortress was never fully documented. When Echrisdis died, the enchantments masking the island collapsed. Ministry investigators finally discovered the structure. What they found disturbed them so deeply that many details were never released publicly. Among the most alarming discoveries were the creatures already inhabiting the fortress. Dementors swarmed the island in large numbers. These beings fed upon human happiness and consumed hope itself. They did not simply guard prisoners, they appeared naturally drawn to locations saturated with suffering. The implication is difficult to ignore. Whatever Echrisdis had done inside that fortress created conditions so horrific that Dementors gathered there of their own accord. The prison known as Azkaban may have begun not as a prison at all, but as a place already poisoned by years of fear and misery. Ministry officials faced an unusual dilemma. Destroying the fortress proved difficult. Controlling the Dementors seemed nearly impossible. Eventually, a decision was made that shaped wizarding Britain for centuries. Rather than abandon the island, the ministry converted it into a prison. Criminals would be confined there. Dementors would serve as guards. To officials of the time, the arrangement seemed practical, yet one cannot help noticing the strange logic involved. Instead of cleansing a cursed place, the ministry institutionalized it. The darkness remained exactly where it was. For prisoners, Azkaban was terrifying not because of physical torture, but because of what Dementors extracted from the mind. Their presence forced victims to relive their worst memories again and again. Joy vanished first, then confidence, then the ability to imagine a better future. Former Minister for Magic Cornelius Fudge once described visiting Azkaban and hearing prisoners screaming in the darkness. The sounds haunted him afterward. Even experienced ministry personnel dreaded assignments involving the prison. They entered knowing that the Dementors would affect them as well. How did anyone survive years within such a place without losing themselves completely? The case of Sirius Black provides one answer. Imprisoned after the deaths of James and Lily Potter in 1981, Sirius spent 12 years in Azkaban. Most inmates deteriorated rapidly under Dementor exposure. Sirius endured because he possessed knowledge that kept his mind focused. He knew he had not betrayed the Potters. The certainty of his innocence acted as an anchor. In addition, his ability to transform into a large black dog reduced the Dementor's influence, since animal emotions are simpler and less attractive to them. The details of Sirius's escape remain among the most remarkable events in modern wizarding history. After seeing a photograph of Peter Pettigrew in the Daily Prophet, Sirius realized the true traitor was hiding near Harry Potter. Determined to act, he transformed into his animagus form and slipped through the prison's defenses. The escape shocked the ministry. Azkaban had long been considered inescapable, yet one prisoner succeeded through patience, intelligence, and an unusual magical ability. The event exposed vulnerabilities in a system that had appeared absolute. Another prisoner demonstrated a different aspect of Azkaban's horror. Bellatrix Lestrange entered the prison following the First Wizarding War. Unlike many inmates, she emerged from years of confinement, with her loyalty to Voldemort intact. Her appearance reflected the prison's effects. By the time Harry saw her after her escape, she looked gaunt and worn. Yet her devotion had survived. Azkaban weakened bodies and minds, but it did not necessarily erase fanaticism. In some cases, it intensified it. The prison's greatest transformation occurred after Voldemort regained strength. Dementors gradually abandoned their alliance with the Ministry and joined him instead. The decision revealed an uncomfortable truth. Dementors were never truly loyal guards. They cooperated when it suited them. Once a more powerful source of fear emerged, they shifted allegiance. Their departure stripped Azkaban of the force upon which its security had depended for generations. A prison built around darkness discovered that darkness could not be trusted. Why does Azkaban feel uniquely cursed, even compared to places touched by Voldemort? Part of the answer lies in duration. Voldemort's rise and fall unfolded across decades. Azkaban accumulated suffering across centuries. Every prisoner carried memories into those cells. Every Dementor fed upon them. Every year added another layer of despair. Unlike a battlefield where violence erupts and passes, Azkaban functioned as a machine designed to preserve misery continuously. The island became a reservoir of human anguish. A popular fan theory suggests that the fortress itself changed over time, absorbing the emotions generated within its walls. Canon never confirms such a transformation, yet the idea persists because it feels strangely consistent with what we know. The island already attracted Dementors before it became a prison. Centuries of incarceration followed. Generations entered fearing they would never leave. Whether the stones themselves retained those memories remains unknown, but few places in magical Britain accumulated more grief than Azkaban. As the waves crash endlessly against black rock and cold sea, mist curls around abandoned towers, another mystery waits beyond the prison walls. For all its horrors, Azkaban stood apart from ordinary life, isolated in distant waters. The next cursed place was different. Children walked beside it every year. Students studied within sight of its trees. Creatures older than many kingdoms roamed beneath its branches, and despite everything hidden there, Hogwarts never tried to remove it. The path now leads from the North Sea to the edge of the Forbidden Forest. Why did the founders of Hogwarts leave an immense and dangerous forest untouched beside the school for 1,000 years? The question becomes more intriguing the longer you consider it. Hogwarts was built by some of the greatest witches and wizards in history. They raised towers from enchanted stone, protected the grounds with powerful magic, and established rules governing every aspect of school life. Yet beyond the lawns and greenhouses, beyond Hagrid's hut and the edge of the lake, stretched a wilderness filled with creatures capable of killing even experienced wizards. The forest was never cleared. It was never domesticated. It remained exactly what its name suggested: forbidden. The Forbidden Forest appears repeatedly throughout Harry Potter's years at Hogwarts, yet its age is easy to overlook. By the time Harry arrived in 1991, ancient oaks and towering pines already dominated the landscape. Narrow paths twisted beneath thick canopies where sunlight struggled to reach the ground. The air carried the scent of damp earth, moss, and wet bark. Strange sounds echoed between the trees after sunset. Students were forbidden to enter without permission, a rule repeated by teachers year after year. The warning itself became part of Hogwarts tradition. One reason for that warning was the presence of centaurs. Deep within the forest lived herds of these intelligent beings, including Bane, Ronan, Magorian, and Firenze. Centaurs possessed profound knowledge of astronomy and spent long nights studying the stars. They maintained their own culture and often viewed human affairs with skepticism. The Ministry of Magic classified them as beings rather than beasts, recognizing their intelligence. Yet relations between centaurs and wizarding society remained strained. The forest served as one of the few places where they could live, according to their own customs without constant interference. Harry's first encounter with the centaurs occurred during a nighttime detention in 1992. Accompanied by Draco Malfoy, Neville Longbottom Fang, and Rubeus Hagrid, he entered the forest, searching for an injured unicorn. There he met Firenze, who intervened when Harry came dangerously close to a hooded figure drinking unicorn blood. Firenze carried Harry away upon his back and explained something deeply unsettling. The creature feeding on the unicorn was sustaining itself through an act so unnatural that it would live only a cursed half-life afterward. The figure, of course, was Lord Voldemort, surviving in weakened form after his failed attempt to kill Harry years earlier. The unicorn killings reveal one of the forest's darkest qualities. Unicorns are among the purest magical creatures in Rowling's world. Their blood possesses extraordinary properties. Drinking it can preserve life even when death is imminent. Yet the act carries a terrible price. Ferenzi's described it clearly. Anyone who drinks unicorn blood gains a cursed existence from the moment the blood touches their lips. The fact that Voldemort committed these acts inside the forest transformed it into a stage for one of the earliest signs of his return. Long before the wizarding world recognized the threat, the trees had already witnessed it. Why do spiders fear one particular creature more than almost anything else? The answer leads deeper into the forest and into the story of Aragog. Hagrid acquired the Acromantula while still a Hogwarts student. After his expulsion in 1943, he secretly helped the spider escape into the forest. There, Aragog established a colony. Over decades, the population expanded dramatically. By the time Harry and Ron visited in 1993, countless giant spiders inhabited the area. Their massive webs stretched between trees, and entire sections of the forest effectively belonged to them. Aragog's conversation with Harry and Ron provided a crucial piece of historical evidence regarding the Chamber of Secrets. The aging spider denied responsibility for Myrtle Warren's death and revealed that the creature responsible was an ancient enemy feared by spiders. He never spoke the basilisk's name directly, yet his words confirmed Hagrid's innocence and pointed Harry toward the truth. Moments later, the Acromantulas attempted to kill Harry and Ron anyway. Their narrow escape in the enchanted Ford Anglia remains one of the most dramatic journeys through the forest. Even information could come at a deadly price beneath those branches. The forest's dangers extended far beyond spiders. Thestrals lived there, visible only to those who had witnessed death and understood its meaning. Harry first noticed them after the death of Cedric Diggory in 1995. Skeletal in appearance, with leathery wings and pale eyes, they inspired fear among many students. Yet Hagrid and later Luna Lovegood understood their true nature. Thestrals were intelligent, gentle, and remarkably useful. Their presence illustrates one of the recurring themes of the Forbidden Forest. Appearances often conceal deeper truths. The forest also sheltered creatures whose existence connected Hogwarts to much older magical traditions. Unicorns wandered among the trees, bowtruckles clung to branches, hippogriffs occasionally occupied clearings under Hagrid's care. During the Second Wizarding War, even giants passed through parts of the wilderness. Grop, Hagrid's half-brother, lived there for a time. The forest functioned almost like a surviving fragment of an older magical world, one that existed before ministries, schools, and modern wizarding laws attempted to organize magical life. How did the forest become involved in the final battle against Voldemort? The answer lies in events from May 1998. After learning that he himself contained a fragment of Voldemort's soul, Harry walked alone into the Forbidden Forest. He carried the resurrection stone concealed within the golden snitch Dumbledore had left him. As he moved through the darkness, the spirits of James Potter, Lily Potter, Sirius Black, and Remus Lupin appeared beside him. Their presence did not change the outcome awaiting him, but it gave him strength. Few locations in the series hold a more emotionally significant moment. It was also within the forest that Voldemort struck Harry with the killing curse. Surrounded by Death Eaters beneath ancient trees that had stood through generations of conflict, Harry willingly sacrificed himself. The act echoed the protection Lily Potter had once provided him. Although Harry survived through the complex interaction of Horcrux magic and Voldemort's use of Harry's blood, the forest became the setting for one of the most important magical sacrifices in the entire story. Once again, a place associated with danger became inseparable from courage. Some readers argue that the Forbidden Forest is not truly cursed at all. They suggest it simply refuses to belong entirely to humanity. There is something persuasive in that interpretation. Unlike Azkaban or the Gaunt Cottage, the forest was not shaped primarily by suffering. Its dangers emerged from ancient creatures, competing territories, and natural magical forces. Yet death, fear, prophecy, and sacrifice repeatedly converged there. Whether cursed or merely untamed, the forest remained one of the most mysterious landscapes in Britain. And still, there were places darker than even these shadowed woods. If the Forbidden Forest concealed dangerous creatures, the next location openly traded in dangerous objects. Along a narrow London street, avoided by respectable witches and wizards, stood a shop where cursed artifacts changed hands every day, where dark magic sat behind dusty glass, waiting for a buyer. To understand the next cursed place, the forest must be left behind for the crooked lanterns and narrow alleys of Nocturne Alley. How many tragedies in wizarding history began with a seemingly harmless purchase from a dusty shelf? The question feels especially appropriate when standing in Nocturne Alley, hidden beside the bustling shops of Diagon Alley. This narrow district occupied a very different place in magical society. Respectable families rarely admitted visiting it. Ministry officials watched it carefully. Yet the alley endured year after year, attracting collectors, smugglers, dark wizards, and the merely curious. Its crooked buildings leaned toward one another as if sharing secrets. And even in daylight, the street often seemed dimmer than the rest of London. Among its most infamous establishments stood Borgin and Burke's. Harry Potter first encountered the shop accidentally in 1992 after misusing Floo powder and arriving in Nocturne Alley instead of Diagon Alley. Through the dusty windows, he glimpsed shelves crowded with unsettling objects. Human skulls rested beside magical instruments. Strange cabinets stood against the walls. The atmosphere felt oppressive long before anyone explained why. Unlike Ollivander's, where every wand represented possibility, Borgin and Burke's displayed items whose histories often involved suffering, greed, or violence. The proprietor, Mr. Borgin, specialized in buying and selling rare magical artifacts. His customers included collectors, descendants of old pureblood families, and individuals interested in darker branches of magic. One of the most memorable objects displayed in the shop was the Hand of Glory. According to its description, the shriveled hand would provide light visible only to its holder when a candle was placed within it. Draco Malfoy later used one during the events surrounding the Battle of the Astronomy Tower. The object itself did not seem particularly powerful compared to Horcruxes or Deathly Hallows, yet its purpose reflected the nature of the shop, tools designed for secrecy, concealment, and questionable intentions. Why did so many dangerous magical objects remain in circulation rather than being destroyed? Borgin and Burke's offers a revealing answer. The wizarding world never fully eliminated dark artifacts. Instead, it often regulated, monitored, or quietly tolerated them. Ancient families inherited cursed jewelry. Collectors preserved forbidden relics. Dealers bought and sold items whose histories stretched back centuries. As a result, places like Borgin and Berks became repositories of magical dangers that survived long after their creators vanished. The shop was less a source of darkness than a museum of accumulated mistakes. One object connected directly to Lord Voldemort's story. During Harry's second year, Lucius Malfoy visited Borgin and Berks while attempting to discreetly dispose of certain dark items before ministry inspections. Among the possessions discussed was a diary that later proved to be one of Voldemort's Horcruxes. Lucius had received the diary from Voldemort years earlier without understanding its true nature. Rather than destroy it, he planted it among Ginny Weasley's school supplies. That single act reopened the Chamber of Secrets. A cursed object passed through ordinary hands, and the consequences reached all the way to Hogwarts. The shop also played a crucial role in one of the cleverest plots of the Second Wizarding War. Hidden inside Borgin and Berks stood a vanishing cabinet. Its twin existed at Hogwarts. These cabinets formed a magical connection, allowing travel between them when functioning properly. Years earlier, Peeves had damaged the Hogwarts cabinet, while nearly headless chaos unfolded around it. For a long time, the pair seemed useless, yet Draco Malfoy spent much of his 6th year secretly repairing the Hogwarts cabinet under Voldemort's orders. The significance of that repair cannot be overstated. Throughout the school year, Draco worked in isolation, balancing fear, guilt, and impossible expectations. Eventually, he succeeded. Death Eaters used the restored Vanishing Cabinet to bypass Hogwarts' defenses and enter the castle. Fenrir Greyback, Amicus Carrow, Alecto Carrow, and others crossed through the magical passage. Their arrival led directly to the confrontation atop the Astronomy Tower and the death of Albus Dumbledore. The cabinet, sitting quietly in a dark shop, became the doorway through which war entered Hogwarts. Nocturne Alley itself accumulated a reputation that extended beyond any single business. Hagrid warned Harry about it almost immediately after they met. Wizards associated the district with practitioners of the dark arts, suspicious commerce, and activities best left unexplored. Yet Rowling never portrays every visitor as irredeemably evil. Curiosity brought some people there. Poverty brought others. The alley occupies a morally complicated position within the world. That ambiguity makes it more believable and, in some ways, more unsettling. Evil rarely announces itself openly. Sometimes it rents a storefront and conducts business during normal hours. Popular fan theory suggests that Borgin and Berks unknowingly handled far more historically significant artifacts than anyone realized. The theory points to the extraordinary concentration of rare objects passing through its doors. While canon never confirms such speculation, the idea has appeal. Ancient magical families often sold possessions during financial decline. Dark wizards concealed treasures among ordinary merchandise. Collectors moved items through private transactions. It is entirely possible that relics of enormous importance sat briefly on those shelves before disappearing into private collections. How does a place become cursed without containing a single great catastrophe? Nocturne Alley provides one answer. Unlike Azkaban, it was not defined by a single horror. Unlike the Chamber of Secrets, it concealed no ancient monster. Instead, countless smaller acts accumulated over generations: illegal trades, dangerous curiosities, dark enchantments, bargains made in desperation or ambition. The district became a crossroads where magical power and human weakness repeatedly met. Yet there existed a house whose darkness came not from commerce but from family. No customers entered seeking forbidden artifacts. No prisoners occupied its rooms. Instead, hatred lingered in portraits. Old traditions clung to the walls, and generations of one ancient bloodline left their mark upon every corridor. From the crowded alleys of London, the journey now leads to number 12, Grimmauld Place, where the Black family transformed a home into one of the most haunted residences in Wizarding Britain. Can a house itself become hostile after centuries of pride, prejudice, and dark magic? Number 12, Grimmauld Place invites exactly that question. Hidden among ordinary London townhouses, the residence remained invisible to Muggles through powerful concealment enchantments. For generations, it served as the ancestral home of the Black family, one of the oldest and most fiercely pure-blood lineages in Britain. Behind its narrow facade lay rooms crowded with heirlooms, portraits, family records, and magical relics. The house preserved history with remarkable efficiency. Unfortunately, much of that history was deeply unpleasant. The Black family viewed blood purity not merely as a preference, but as a defining principle. Their family tree, later examined by Harry, Sirius, Ron, and Hermione, revealed generations of carefully arranged marriages between old wizarding families. Names such as Lestrange, Malfoy, Rosier, and Yaxley appeared repeatedly among the branches. Family members who rejected pure-blood ideology often faced severe consequences. Sirius Black's name had literally been burned from the tapestry after he ran away from home and joined the Order of the Phoenix. The damage remained visible for years, a permanent reminder of the family's refusal to tolerate dissent. One of the most memorable features of Grimmauld Place was the portrait of Walburga Black, Sirius's mother. Mounted on the wall near the entrance, the portrait possessed an astonishing ability to disturb the peace. Whenever noise or activity occurred nearby, Walburga's image erupted into furious screaming. Her insults targeted Muggle-borns, blood traders, and anyone she considered unworthy. Members of the Order frequently struggled to silence her. Curtains concealed the portrait when possible, yet complete quiet was difficult to maintain in a headquarters occupied by numerous witches and wizards. Why does Walburga's portrait feel more disturbing than many openly dark magical objects? The answer lies in what it represents. The portrait was not a cursed artifact created by a dark wizard. It was a preserved personality. The hatred displayed by Walburga reflected beliefs she genuinely held while alive. Unlike enchanted traps or cursed jewelry, her portrait reminded visitors that some of the darkest forces in the wizarding world emerged from ordinary people making conscious choices. The screaming figure on the wall was unsettling because she revealed how prejudice could survive long after death. The house contained other reminders of the Black family's worldview. Mounted along one corridor were the shrunken heads of deceased house elves. Creature occasionally spoke of them with pride, reflecting values he had absorbed during decades of service. To outsiders, the display appeared grotesque. To parts of the Black family, it represented tradition. Grimold Place repeatedly confronted visitors with this contrast. What one generation considered honorable, another recognized as cruel. The house preserved both perspectives simultaneously, allowing old conflicts to linger within its walls. At the center of many of those tensions stood Creature himself. The elderly house elf embodied the complicated legacy of the Black family more completely than any object or portrait. Loyal to the family line, resentful towards Sirius, and deeply influenced by years of pureblood ideology, Creature initially created serious problems for the Order. His conversations with Narcissa Malfoy and Bellatrix Lestrange contributed indirectly to events that led Sirius into danger. Yet Creature's story also demonstrated that loyalty and affection could transform even deeply rooted attitudes. Harry's eventual kindness toward him produced changes that years of commands never achieved. How did one of Voldemort's Horcruxes end up hidden inside this already troubled house? The answer begins with Regulus Arcturus Black. For many years, Regulus was remembered primarily as Sirius's younger brother and a former Death Eater. After his death, however, a very different story emerged. Regulus discovered the truth about Voldemort's Horcruxes after witnessing the Dark Lord use Creature during the protection of a locket hidden in a seaside cave. Horrified by what he learned, Regulus decided to oppose Voldemort. He returned to the cave, retrieved the Horcrux, and left behind a fake locket containing a message signed with the initials R.A.B. The genuine locket eventually found its way to Grimold Place. Creature brought it home after Regulus's death. Years later, during a cleanup of the house, Harry and his friends unknowingly handled the object without recognizing its significance. The locket survived because nobody realized what it truly was. Mundungus Fletcher later stole it among other valuables from the house. Through a chain of events involving Dolores Umbridge and the Ministry of Magic, the Horcrux remained hidden until Harry, Ron, and Hermione finally recovered it during their hunt in 1997. The destruction of the locket added another layer to the house's strange history. Although the Horcrux itself was destroyed elsewhere by Ron Weasley using the Sword of Gryffindor, Grimold Place remained one of the key locations through which it passed. The house sheltered a fragment of Voldemort's soul for years without its occupants understanding the danger. Looking back, it seems almost fitting. A residence shaped by generations of obsession with bloodlines became a temporary resting place for one of the darkest magical creations ever made. During the Second Wizarding War, Grimold Place served a very different purpose as headquarters of the Order of the Phoenix. Members gathered there to exchange intelligence, plan operations, and resist Voldemort's growing influence. Figures such as Alastor Moody, Remus Lupin, Kingsley Shacklebolt, Nymphadora Tonks, Molly Weasley, Arthur Weasley, and Sirius himself moved through its rooms. The contrast is striking. A house built around exclusion became a refuge for people united by resistance, cooperation, and sacrifice. The building did not change overnight, but its purpose did. Some readers see Grimold Place as one of Rowling's clearest examples of inherited history. You do not choose the house into which you are born. You do not choose the beliefs hanging on the walls before you can speak. Yet you do choose what to do with that inheritance. Sirius rejected much of his family's ideology. Regulus eventually turned against Voldemort. Harry transformed creatures' loyalty through compassion rather than force. The house remained the same structure of stone, wood, and magic, but the people within it changed the meaning of those rooms. And yet, even Grimmauld Place could not match the deliberate cruelty of the next cursed location. The Black family house accumulated darkness gradually across generations. The place waiting ahead was different. It was chosen personally by Tom Riddle. It was protected by Inferi, poisoned by enchantments, and tied to one of the most important Horcruxes ever created. To reach it, the journey must leave London entirely and follow a lonely stretch of coastline to a sea cave where Voldemort hid both a fragment of his soul and a piece of his past. Why did Voldemort choose a place from his own childhood to protect one of the most important Horcruxes he ever created? The question becomes increasingly fascinating the more one learns about the cave by the sea. Lord Voldemort rarely displayed sentiment in any recognizable form. He dismissed love, friendship, and family bonds as weaknesses. Yet again and again he selected locations connected to his personal history when hiding fragments of his soul. The Chamber of Secrets reflected his link to Salazar Slytherin. The gaunt ring connected him to his ancestry, and on a remote stretch of coastline stood a cave he had first entered as a child, decades before he became the Dark Lord. The story begins during Tom Riddle's years at Wool's orphanage in London, long before Hogwarts, before Horcruxes, before the name Voldemort existed. Tom accompanied other children on a trip to the coast. During that visit, he discovered the cave. Years later, Albus Dumbledore shared memories revealing that two children, Amy Benson and Dennis Bishop, entered the cave with Tom and emerged deeply shaken. Neither child ever fully explained what had happened inside. Dumbledore later questioned Mrs. Cole, the orphanage matron, who remembered the incident vividly. Whatever Tom did within the cave, it frightened the other children enough to leave a lasting impression. This episode is significant because it offers one of the earliest glimpses of Tom's developing personality. Even before learning magic formally, he enjoyed exercising power over others. At Wool's orphanage, he collected trophies from children he bullied. He discovered he could speak Parseltongue instinctively. He learned that fear could be used as a weapon. The cave became one of the first places where he experimented with that power away from adult supervision. It represented secrecy, control, and domination. Those themes would remain central throughout his life. When Voldemort returned years later, he transformed the location into something far more dangerous. Deep within the cave, he created elaborate magical defenses to protect Salazar Slytherin's Locket Horcrux. The entrance itself required magical skill to access. A concealed passage led toward a vast underground chamber containing a black lake. The water stretched silently into darkness. Small ripples disturbed its surface from time to time, though no visible source appeared. Even before learning what lurked beneath, visitors sensed that something was profoundly wrong. Why did Voldemort fill the lake with Inferi rather than relying solely on spells? The answer reveals much about his mindset. Inferi are corpses reanimated through dark magic and controlled by a wizard's will. Unlike ghosts, they are not conscious remnants of the dead. They are bodies transformed into magical weapons. Voldemort concealed enormous numbers of inferi beneath the lake's surface. They remained motionless and invisible until disturbed. Anyone attempting to cross the water risked awakening an army of the dead. The choice was practical, terrifying, and symbolically appropriate for a wizard obsessed with conquering death. At the center of the lake stood a small island supporting a stone basin. Within the basin rested a potion unlike anything Harry Potter had encountered before. The liquid appeared emerald green and emitted a strange glow. Voldemort designed the enchantment with extraordinary care. The potion could not simply be vanished, transfigured, or removed magically. It had to be consumed. Only after the basin was emptied would access to the Horcrux become possible. The protection did not rely on brute force alone. It relied on psychological torment. The events of June 1997 transformed the cave into one of the most memorable settings in the series. Guided by information gathered through years of investigation, Dumbledore brought Harry there. Together they crossed the lake aboard a small enchanted boat. Dumbledore immediately recognized many of the defensive enchantments. His experience allowed them to progress further than most intruders ever could. Yet even he could not bypass the potion. To reach the locket, someone would have to drink every drop. What follows reveals both Dumbledore's strength and his vulnerability. Despite understanding the risks, he chose to consume the potion himself. With each drink, the liquid weakened him further. He experienced terrible visions and emotional torment. Harry obeyed repeated instructions to continue forcing him to drink, even as Dumbledore begged him to stop. At one point, the headmaster cried out as though reliving painful memories. Rowling never specifies exactly what he saw, but many readers believe the visions involved his family, Ariana's death, and regrets he carried throughout his life. After the basin was emptied, Dumbledore retrieved what appeared to be Slytherin's locket. Yet the ordeal was not over. The potion created intense thirst. Desperate for water, Dumbledore approached the lake, despite recognizing the danger. The moment Harry collected water from its surface, the inferi attacked. Pale hands erupted from the darkness. Corpses dragged themselves from beneath the water. The scene combined nearly every fear Voldemort wished to exploit: helplessness, death, isolation, and despair. Dumbledore's response remains one of the most powerful displays of magic in the series. Surrounded by inferi, weakened by the potion, and standing on a small island in darkness, he unleashed an immense ring of fire. Flames surged across the cavern. The inferi recoiled. The lake reflected blazing orange light. Harry later described the sight as extraordinary. Even at the end of his life, exhausted and cursed by the gaunt ring, Dumbledore remained capable of astonishing magical power. The fire bought them enough time to escape. Yet perhaps the cave's cruelest twist awaited them afterward. The locket Dumbledore retrieved was not the real Horcrux. Regulus Black had already stolen the original years earlier and replaced it with a fake. Inside the counterfeit locket lay a message signed R.A.B., informing Voldemort that his secret had been discovered. All of Dumbledore's suffering in the cave had secured only a decoy. The revelation demonstrates how thoroughly Regulus disrupted Voldemort's plans. A young man once loyal to the Dark Lord had succeeded where countless enemies failed. The cave remains one of the clearest examples of a place deliberately transformed into a curse. Unlike Azkaban, which inherited darkness from its history, or the Forbidden Forest, whose dangers emerged naturally, the cave was shaped intentionally. Every defense reflected Voldemort's fears and priorities. The inferi reflected his disregard for human life. The potion exploited emotional pain. The hidden location reflected secrecy and control. The cave became a physical expression of the Dark Lord's mind. Yet the next cursed place presents a striking contrast. Voldemort chose the cave. He built its horrors himself. The location waiting ahead became cursed through tragedy rather than design. It was a quiet village known for gardens, cottages, and ancient gravestones. Yet twice in living memory, it became a crossroads where death and destiny met. The road now leads inland toward Godric's Hollow, where one peaceful street changed the course of wizarding history forever. Why does one of the most peaceful villages in magical Britain repeatedly find itself at the center of history's darkest moments? Godric's Hollow appears at first glance completely unremarkable. Nestled in the West Country, it resembles countless other British villages with narrow lanes, stone cottages, and an old church overlooking a graveyard. Wizards and muggles have lived there side by side for centuries. Children play in its streets. Families tend gardens behind low walls. Yet few locations in the wizarding world possess a deeper connection to both hope and loss. Beneath its quiet appearance lies a history shaped by some of the most important figures ever to wield a wand. The village takes its name from Godric Gryffindor, one of Hogwarts' 4 founders. According to wizarding tradition, Gryffindor was born in the area long before the school itself existed. Centuries later, Godric's Hollow continued attracting notable magical residents. The historian Bathilda Bagshot lived there. The Potter family eventually settled there. For a period, even Albus Dumbledore called the village home. This concentration of significant figures gives Godric's Hollow a unique character. It is not merely a place where history happened. It is a place where generations of magical history seem to overlap. The most famous event occurred on the night of October 31st, 1981. By that point, Lord Voldemort had spent years terrorizing wizarding Britain during the First Wizarding War. Acting upon information provided by Severus Snape regarding a prophecy, Voldemort became convinced that infant Harry Potter represented a threat to him. The Potters went into hiding under the protection of the Fidelius charm. Peter Pettigrew served as secret keeper. When Pettigrew betrayed them, Voldemort learned their location and traveled to Godric's Hollow. Inside a small cottage, events unfolded that transformed the wizarding world forever. James Potter attempted to hold Voldemort off without his wand and was killed. Lily Potter refused repeated opportunities to step aside and save herself. Instead, she remained with her son. Voldemort murdered her as well. Then he turned his wand upon Harry. The killing curse rebounded. Voldemort's body was destroyed. The house suffered catastrophic damage, and a child barely 15 months old survived an attack no one had ever survived before. Why did the curse rebound that night when it had never failed before? The answer lies at the heart of the series. Lily's deliberate sacrifice created a powerful magical protection rooted in love. Voldemort understood countless branches of magic, yet he consistently underestimated this one. By choosing death rather than abandoning her son, Lily invoked an ancient protective force. The result, shattered Voldemort's plans, Godric's Hollow became the location where the most feared dark wizard in modern history unexpectedly fell. The damaged cottage remained standing afterward. As a memorial, wizards preserved it rather than rebuilding it. Years later, magical messages appeared across its ruined walls, left by visitors honoring Harry and his parents. For many in the wizarding world, the house represented victory. For Harry, it represented something more complicated. It was the place where he lost the parents he never truly knew. Every stone carried both public meaning and private grief. The village became sacred, not because of triumph alone, but because of sacrifice. The village cemetery reveals just how much magical history rests beneath its soil. When Harry and Hermione visited in 1997, they discovered numerous familiar names among the gravestones. James and Lily Potter lay buried there. Nearby stood the grave of Ignotus Peveril, the youngest of the three brothers from The Tale of the Three Brothers. The connection mattered enormously. Ignotus inherited the original invisibility cloak, which eventually passed through generations until it reached Harry. The discovery linked Harry's family directly to one of the oldest legends in wizarding culture. Another grave drew Harry's attention during that visit: the resting place of Kendra Dumbledore, her daughter Ariana, and her son Albus. Their shared monument quietly summarized decades of tragedy. Ariana's death had shaped Dumbledore's entire life. His friendship with Gellert Grindelwald collapsed after the events surrounding her death. Much of Dumbledore's later wisdom emerged from lessons learned through that loss. Standing among those graves, Harry found himself surrounded by the consequences of choices made long before he was born. Why did Voldemort choose to return to Godric's Hollow indirectly in 1997 through one of his most dangerous servants? The answer involves Bathilda Bagshot. Once a respected magical historian and author of A History of Magic, Bathilda spent her final years living alone in the village. At some point before Harry's arrival, she died. Voldemort then used her body as a vessel for Nagini. The snake concealed itself within the corpse, waiting for Harry. It remains one of the most disturbing images in the series because it corrupts something familiar and trusted. A respected elder became part of a trap. When Harry and Hermione entered Bathilda's house, the atmosphere felt wrong immediately. Dust filled the rooms. The elderly woman behaved strangely. Eventually, Nagini emerged from within the corpse and attacked. A violent struggle followed. Hermione's quick action saved Harry's life, though his wand was broken during the escape. Once again, Godric's Hollow became the setting for an encounter with Voldemort's influence. The village seemed unable to escape its connection to him, even years after his first defeat there. Yet despite these tragedies, Godric's Hollow never loses its essential character. Families continue living there. Snow still falls upon the churchyard during winter. The memorials remain, but life continues around them. This may be the village's most remarkable quality. It absorbs grief without becoming defined entirely by grief. The curse is not the darkness repeatedly arrives there. The mystery is that the village endures despite it. And still, one final cursed place remains before the story can return to Hogwarts. Unlike Godric's Hollow, it was hidden beneath government offices rather than village streets. Unlike the cave, it concealed mysteries even Voldemort did not fully understand. prophecies lined its shelves. Unspeakables guarded its secrets. At its center hung an ancient veil through which voices whispered from somewhere beyond life itself. The path now descends beneath the Ministry of Magic into the Department of Mysteries. What exactly is the veil, and why do even the most knowledgeable witches and wizards seem unable to explain it completely? Deep beneath the Ministry of Magic lies the Department of Mysteries, a place so secretive that most ministry employees know almost nothing about its work. The witches and wizards who labor there are called unspeakables, a title that reflects both professional secrecy and the nature of the subjects they study: time, death, love, prophecy, consciousness. Forces so fundamental that even magical society struggles to understand them. Hidden among a network of strange chambers stands perhaps the most unsettling object in the entire wizarding world: an ancient stone archway draped with a tattered black veil. Harry Potter first entered the Department of Mysteries in June 1996. By then, Voldemort had spent months attempting to lure him there. The target was not Harry himself, but a prophecy stored within the Hall of Prophecy. Thousands of glass orbs occupied towering shelves stretching into the distance, each containing a recorded prophecy. Only those directly connected to a prophecy could safely retrieve it. Voldemort wanted to hear the full contents of the prophecy concerning himself and Harry. Unable to collect it personally, he manipulated events to draw Harry into the Ministry. The Hall of Prophecy already felt eerie before any battle began. Endless rows of shelves disappeared into shadow. Glass spheres glimmered faintly in the darkness. Every orb contained knowledge about futures that might unfold. Some prophecies had already come true, others never would. The room seemed less like an archive and more like a vault, holding possibilities themselves. Harry eventually located the prophecy labeled with his own name and Voldemort's. In doing so, he carried an object that had shaped both of their lives long before either understood its significance. Yet the Hall of Prophecy was only one part of the department. Beyond it lay chambers devoted to mysteries that bordered on the incomprehensible. One room contained enormous water-filled tanks where magical creatures drifted through darkness. Another housed strange brains floating in potion. The time room contained clocks of every imaginable size and shape, along with devices used in the study of temporal magic. Rowling offers only brief glimpses of many of these locations, but those glimpses are enough to suggest that the Department of Mysteries investigates questions most of the wizarding world prefers not to confront directly. Why does the Death Chamber feel older than the Ministry itself? The room appears unlike any other location beneath the government building. At its center stands a sunken stone pit surrounded by tiers of benches, resembling an ancient amphitheater. Upon a raised platform rests the archway. The black veil hanging from it moves constantly, despite the absence of wind. More disturbing still, certain people can hear faint voices coming from beyond it. Harry hears them. Luna Lovegood hears them. Others do not. The phenomenon is never fully explained. The existence of the veil has generated endless discussion among readers because Rowling deliberately leaves many questions unanswered. What is certain is that crossing through the veil results in death. The boundary appears permanent. No character who passes through returns. Yet the object does not behave like a simple doorway. Harry initially believes Sirius might still be alive after falling through it because no body remains. The uncertainty reflects the strange nature of the veil itself. It feels less like an execution device and more like a threshold separating two states of existence. The battle of the Department of Mysteries transformed these abstract questions into personal tragedy. After arriving with Ron, Hermione, Ginny, Neville, and Luna, Harry soon found himself surrounded by Death Eaters. Lucius Malfoy led the group. Bellatrix Lestrange was present. So were numerous followers of Voldemort seeking the prophecy. A chaotic battle erupted throughout the department's chambers. Shelves collapsed in the Hall of Prophecy. Time devices shattered. Magical experiments were destroyed. One of the Ministry's most secret locations became a battlefield. As the conflict escalated, members of the Order of the Phoenix arrived to protect the students. Among them was Sirius Black. The sight of Sirius fighting alongside Harry represented a rare moment of hope. After years of imprisonment and isolation, he had regained a meaningful role in Harry's life. He moved through the battle with confidence and determination. For a brief time, it seemed possible that both Godfather and Godson might survive the night together. Then Bellatrix Lestrange struck. During a duel inside the Death Chamber, a curse hit Sirius. Rowling intentionally leaves the precise spell ambiguous. What matters is what happened next. Sirius fell backward through the veil. There was no dramatic explosion of magic, no prolonged farewell. One moment he stood on the platform. The next he disappeared beyond the curtain. The simplicity of the event made it even more devastating. Why is Sirius's death often remembered as one of the most painful losses in the series? Part of the answer lies in timing. Harry had only recently begun building a genuine relationship with him. Sirius represented family, belonging, and the possibility of a future beyond the Dursleys. His death closed that door abruptly, yet the setting contributes equally to the tragedy. Sirius did not die in battle upon a castle wall or a battlefield. He vanished into one of the deepest mysteries in existence. The veil transformed grief into uncertainty. The battle produced other consequences as well. The prophecy was destroyed before Voldemort could hear it. Dumbledore finally confronted Voldemort directly in the Ministry atrium. Cornelius Fudge witnessed the Dark Lord with his own eyes, ending months of denial. The wizarding world entered a new phase of the war. Yet when readers remember the Department of Mysteries, they rarely think first of political consequences. They remember the whispering veil, the ancient archway, and the unanswered questions surrounding death itself. Some readers believe the veil predates the Ministry entirely. The theory suggests that the Department of Mysteries was built around an already existing magical structure, rather than creating it. Canon never confirms this, but the room's architecture encourages the speculation. Unlike surrounding chambers, it feels ancient. The amphitheater resembles something from a forgotten age. Even the unspeakables appear to study the veil, rather than control it. If true, that would make the object one of the oldest mysteries in magical Britain. And so the journey through cursed places arrives back where it began, at Hogwarts. Beneath the castle rests the Chamber of Secrets. Nearby stretches the Forbidden Forest. Within its history lie deaths, battles, betrayals, sacrifices, and miracles. Yet after every monster, every curse, every war, students still arrive each September beneath floating candles and enchanted ceilings. The final question waiting in the darkness is the largest of all. After 1,000 years of secrets and suffering, why did Hogwarts become a symbol of hope instead of the most cursed place in the wizarding world? When you look back across all of these places, something curious begins to emerge. The wizarding world is filled with cursed locations, but the curses themselves are rarely the true source of danger. The Chamber of Secrets was not born evil because stone was carved into the shape of serpents. Azkaban was not terrible because an island rose from the sea. Grimmauld Place was not dark because of its bricks and timber. Again and again, the deepest wounds came from choices. Salazar Slytherin chose secrecy. Echrizdus chose cruelty. Voldemort chose domination. The places endured, but the first darkness always arrived through a human hand holding a wand. That is why the geography of Rowling's world often feels strangely alive. Places remember, not in the simple way that portraits remember conversations or ghosts remember their deaths, but in a quieter way. Every location we visited became layered with consequences. A cave remembered a frightened orphan who discovered he enjoyed power. A village remembered a mother's sacrifice. A forest remembered both predators and protectors moving beneath its branches. The land itself became a record of decisions repeated across generations. By the time Harry enters these places, he is never stepping into an empty room. He is stepping into history. Yet there is another pattern hidden beneath the first one. Nearly every cursed place eventually becomes the setting for resistance. The Chamber of Secrets becomes the place where Harry destroys a Horcrux without realizing it. Grimmauld Place becomes the headquarters of the Order of the Phoenix. The cave that Voldemort filled with Inferi becomes the location where Dumbledore continues his final mission. Even Godric's Hollow, marked forever by loss, remains a symbol of survival rather than defeat. Darkness leaves its mark, but it never gains exclusive ownership of the places it touches. Someone always returns. Someone always challenges what came before. This may be the deepest idea running through the entire Harry Potter series. Voldemort believes that power allows him to define the meaning of places, people, and events. He believes that murder can erase. He believes that fear can permanently reshape the world, yet he is wrong almost every time. The cave becomes part of Dumbledore's story. The prophecy becomes part of Harry's story. The house in Godric's Hollow becomes Lily's story. Even Hogwarts itself refuses to become what Voldemort wants it to become. The castle witnesses war, but remains a school. It witnesses death, but remains a home. And perhaps that is why Hogwarts stands at the center of all these cursed places without ever becoming fully cursed itself. Beneath it lies the Chamber of Secrets. Beside it stretches the Forbidden Forest. Its corridors have seen the deaths of Myrtle, Cedric Diggory, Albus Dumbledore, Severus Snape, Fred Weasley, and many others. Dark magic has passed through its halls for 1,000 years. Yet children continue arriving every September carrying trunks, owls, and nervous excitement. The castle survives because it is constantly renewed by new lives entering old spaces. Hope arrives as regularly as the school year itself. So, as the journey ends, you may notice that the wizarding world's cursed places are not really stories about curses. They are stories about memory, about what remains after fear passes through a place, about whether pain is allowed to become the final chapter. The answer throughout these stories is almost always the same. The darkness remains visible, the scars remain visible, but something else remains as well. Loyalty, friendship, courage, love, not as abstract virtues, but as forces powerful enough to alter the meaning of entire landscapes. And now the lantern is swinging once more beneath Hogwarts. The ancient stones are silent. Water drips somewhere deep in the darkness. The basilisk is gone. The battles are over. The voices have faded into memory. Yet the castle still stands above, watching over another quiet night, while the faint reflection of the lantern trembles across the black water, exactly where our journey began.